Welcome, listeners. And tonight we have a very special guest. You may know him as one of the aliens in Jose Chung's From Outer Space, but he is also responsible for some of the magic that made the X-Files happen. I am very excited and very nervous today to have Chris Waddell with me on Fandom X Archive. Chris, why don't you introduce yourself and say hi to our listeners?
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. I hope everybody's doing well. So my name's Chris Waddell, and I moved to Vancouver with one of my best friends, Mike Fields, in 1994. My background is actually in music, and my buddy Mike's background was in special effects makeup. He had gone to a school in Florida and graduated from there. Being a Canadian, he couldn't really work in the U.S., so he came back up to Canada to look for work. I had growing up, I'd spent quite a bit of time in Vancouver and on the West Coast. So he knew that I was kind of like familiar with the ground out there. And when he came back up, he asked me if I wanted to move out to Vancouver with him. And he was going to work in the film industry, and of course I could go and continue what I was doing in the music industry out there. So in the summer of 1994, we both headed out to Vancouver. I started working in the music industry almost immediately. Mike knew that the X-Files was in Vancouver at the time. Neither of us were like super huge fans, but Mike knew that it was definitely something that he wanted to try and work on at the time. And so that would have been season 2 that summer. Actually, in the summer, season 2 probably would have ended. And Mike had gotten in there and met with Toby Lindola. So if you watch, the credits throughout the years of the Vancouver era, Toby Lindola and Lindola Makeup Effects was the company who did the special effects makeup work for the show. So when Mike got out there, and in between season 2 and season 3 was really when the show really exploded, and really, the popularity was really starting to ramp up. So that meant bigger budgets, bigger scripts, bigger effects, all of those good things that come with a successful TV show. So when Mike first met Toby, Toby maybe had 3 or 4 people that were veterans from the special effects makeup in that area that had worked on television shows and films, independent shows and things like that. But as far as a shop, Toby was still actually in his basement of his house. And so Mike had met him there. I got invited down to go down and see the shop, and it was pretty cool. A makeup effects shop, whether it's in someone's basement or whether it's in a huge, warehouse, it's always going to be cool, filled with some really cool stuff. So we got to see some of the stuff that Toby'd worked on before, as well as what he was working on for the X-Files at the time. So when season 3 started, and yeah, like these budgets started getting bigger and started calling for more elaborate effects, Toby needed people. And 94, 95, and like I said, even though the film industry and TV industry had been in Vancouver, probably since the 70s or so, if not maybe a little bit before, but the explosion didn't happen yet. And X-Files became, the #1 TV show on the planet. So that brought a lot of attention to Vancouver. So Hollywood wanted to start come filming in Vancouver, and also in British Columbia. So that really gave an influx to the whole entire industry. But 94, 95, a lot of the film schools, they weren't really churning out a lot of the students, so there really wasn't an active pool of a lot of special effects artists that Toby could choose from at the time. Like I said, like he had maybe 3 or 4 people that had kind of floated around the area. So Mike started working, and I think I actually probably would have been in the beginning of season 3 that Mike started. I was looking, and I started around 7:31 when they were filming 7:31. My first day on set was actually a location north of Vancouver, and Toby was working on some of the radiation makeups for there was the submarine crew that was all filled with radiation that was coming up. So he was actually working on a makeup for that in the truck. And when we got there, we actually got to see the explosion of the train car. So that was my very first day on set, was to be able to see this train car explode in front of us. And yeah, it's quite amazing.
Well, thank you for telling that. That has to be the coolest way to be introduced to to the first day on a set of your favorite show. And you get to see that amazing explosion in that episode where Mulder is on a train, and then of course it explodes and Mr. X carries him out. That's I was just wondering, because you say that your background is in music and then you started
Yeah.
working as a special effects and a makeup artist on the X-Files. So did you have to take any classes? Did you have to, like, what did you have to do in order to make that transition?
I really have to owe it all to Mike and Toby, and also Roy McGregor. I don't know if desperate would be the word, but Toby really needed people. I wouldn't say I'm gifted or anything like that, but I learned very quickly. And Mike, growing up with Mike and I have known each other since we were like teenagers. So he used to practice like a lot of special effects on me. I've got some old pictures of like my face ripped off and a shotgun wound to my head. So he used to practice on me. So I had a kind of a basic idea of some very high level, like from face casting and things like that. So when I got hired on at the shop initially, it was really in an apprentice type role. And also I was hired in a role to help keep the shop kind of like straightened out. So I did a lot of cleaning up. It was, kind of like a grunt work, like I did all like, get the water ready for face casts and get all the bandages ready. I did all of the stock, make sure, that we had everything we needed, from plaster to clay, to, latex, the foam latex materials. So that was kind of my beginning role. And as we went along, and as I was assisting them with everything from doing, face cast, arm cast, leg cast, body cast, I was learning as we went along. Back then, before they started using silicone skins for a lot of appliances for film and makeup these days, we were still using foam latex appliances, latex itself, makeup, and also something called gelatin. And gelatin, so it's kind of like the jello you would eat, but it's a different bloom. I wouldn't recommend eating it, but you probably could, and you wouldn't be hurt, kind of thing. But so we used to make a lot of appliances out of gel, and that kind of became my forte, my area of the shop. I would make up all the gel, and I would do the coloring for skin pigmentation to match it up with what, whoever it had to be, or whatever body part, that kind of thing. So I was very lucky, because later on, as we really needed people, um, we were starting to get students that came out of the makeup schools, but they didn't have a lot of experience in like fiberglass mold making or silicone. When we worked with silicone molds, um, the graduates from the film schools just didn't have their own experience outside of what they were taught. So Toby didn't want to hire somebody that, like me, they had to kind of teach as we went along. We couldn't just hire a bunch of people and teach as we were trying to get things done, right? We needed people that knew what they were doing to come in
Yeah.
and help out, and keep everything running. Um, for season 3 and a good part of season 4, there was really let's probably only around 5 or 6 of us that were working at the shop. And so one of the things I've always talked about when people like, you must love working in the film industry and it must be so great. And it really is. I have absolutely no regrets, but the toll that it takes, the time, and especially when you're under the gun. So we're working on an episode, filming an episode. We're also working on things that are coming up for the next episode and making those things, as well as, whatever's coming for the next episode is also coming down the pipe. So that all of those things working and then having to need people on set as well, it was it was pretty hard there for a while for the shop, because we did work pretty much 6 7 days a week, uh you know countless hours a day. But once we got into season 4, we started to get more people that were experienced, and the shop really started to grow from there.
Well, you just answered the question that I have a list of questions. I was going to ask you how much time your crew would have for each episode, because in a lot of those X-Files episodes, there's so much work, there's so much makeup and practical effects. And I was just thinking, they would have had to given you a lot of time to work on those. And what you're describing is that it was pretty hectic.
It was, yeah, it was very hectic. And then in season 4, I think it was 95, we also picked up Chris Carter's other show, Millennium. So then we had, all of the things they're doing for X-Files, as well as all the stuff that we needed to do for Millennium. So yeah, it became very hectic. If you remember back then when the episodes were airing, like it was pretty much a new episode every week. And it was probably within 2 weeks per episode, really. And I think that would be pushing it, really. Like really, it was, they were wanting to get an episode per week, which is a lot of filming and a lot of time, and a lot of stuff to get in. So that's why you ended up, sometimes you would get a rerun, because things were kind of tripping along, and yeah, things weren't ready. And second unit, I think even sometimes they even had a third unit shooting some stuff. I talk to my friends that are in the industry today, and really, I think they have it a lot easier than we did back in the day, just because it seems like the shooting schedules aren't quite as grueling. You still are on set for, maybe, 14, 18 hours a day, but it's not, straight flat out like it was back then.
Yeah, I mean, very few shows today do what the X-Files, what most of the shows did back then. It's 20 to 24 episodes a season and every week. And now it's like, you look at Netflix and they just do 10 episode per season, and that's it, they're done. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Last summer, I was a guest at the X-Files convention in Saratoga, with the X-Files Museum folk. And before before I went down, and I've got a lot of the X-Files seasons and stuff, but I haven't watched them in quite a while, so I wanted to catch up and kind of refresh myself with the episodes for any questions that people might have, because we, like you said, we did like a lot of stuff, like everything from things you would really see like a creature, to something as simple as Mulder or Scully or someone cutting their finger, and it would be some kind of blood effect or something like that. So everything from huge stuff to small stuff was all there. I lost my train of thought.
Talking about Saratoga Springs.
Oh yeah, so I put in the DVDs and I dug them out, and I had really forgot how many episodes there was per season. And I think before I ended up leaving, I think I might have gotten like halfway through season 3. So, and I wasn't watching like back to back, hour to hour, but like just trying to watch them as I could. um and even just like I was saying, like in those episodes, like there were some episodes I just couldn't remember anything that we would have done for it. And then I would see something, be like, oh yeah, that, like, again, like like a little finger effect or something like that. It's like, oh yeah, we did that. So yeah, it was really cool to kind of refresh myself after not seeing a lot of the effects that we'd done for quite a while.
Well, we're definitely going to talk about Saratoga Springs because I know, like you just said, that you've been there, and I think that you've been there more than once. And
No,
or oh, we can
that was
talk
my.
about it now. We can talk about Saratoga now if you want.
Well, I was just going to say that was actually just my first. That was my first time there.
That
It's
was your
the
first time.
yeah, it's the first convention that I've ever been invited to.
Oh, the first ever.
Hmm.
That must have been really cool. Well, we'll talk more about that because I was also
Sure. Yeah.
there at the museum, not last year, but in 2022. That was
Right.
yeah, my first X-Files convention ever. But now it's me who's losing my train of thought. I was going to ask you, you mentioned when I'm just gonna tell to the
Yeah.
listeners that Chris and I have been chatting on Twitter just, to prepare for the interview. And Chris told me that he mentioned two episodes that were the best and the worst to work on. Why don't you tell us what those episodes are and why?
So Jose Chung was one of my favorite ones. And that obviously, I'm trying to think of what we were doing before Jose Chung. I think it was Hell Money. And Toby had come up to Mike and I. A friend of ours, Doug Morrow, was also working at the shop at the time, and he said, "Hey, for the next episode, they need these aliens. Would you guys want to be aliens?" And I mean, yeah, to be asked, I mean, to work on the show, amazing in its own, but to get to be an alien on the X-Files out of any, creature that you could be asked to be, yeah, we were just absolutely blown away. Mike and I, growing up together and being kids and watching horror movies and extra, close encounters and all of this stuff. For us, yeah, we were just ecstatic, like over the moon, to be able to do that. So playing the aliens on Jose Chung was a huge thing. And then the episode Home is another favorite, and probably for a lot of us. And we understand, that it was a very controversial episode. It's some people's most hated episode. There's some people that won't watch the episode, but for a bunch of guys and girls that make dead bodies and aliens, to receive a script and start reading the script, we were just like our jaws were on the ground because there's no way they can even show this. Like how are they going to do this? Like a mutant baby, a mother with no arms and no legs, and the boys, feed her by regurgitating into her mouth and have sex with her to procreate. Like this is not going to happen. But we were amazed because it's like, wow, we get to do a mutant baby. So that episode, just for the sheer craziness of what it was and what we were dealing with, the inbred family, so that was, yeah, just an amazing episode for us, because we never thought they would be able to show it on TV, but B, yeah, just for insofar as makeup effects goes, I wouldn't say one of the goriest ones that we did, but definitely up there. And then for the most hated, and I'm going to get probably flack from Kelly from the X-Files Museum because this is her favorite episode. And that is, oh my goodness, I lost my train of thought. I forgot the name. Quagmire. Quagmire. So Quagmire, of course, is Big Blue, the Big Blue episode, the sea serpent. We had to create a sea monster, and the design, and I certainly don't want I don't want to slag Toby here, but the design that he came up with. So we had I think 3 or 4 humps that were made out of fiberglass, and then we had this massive, geez, how long was that neck? 8 or 9 feet long neck, And then it's now at the X-Files Museum. I actually used to have it here, was Big Blue's head was on top of that. Now, I'm sorry, I know we're doing audio here, but what the crew, what production wanted was they wanted, the humps in the water, and they wanted the head to come out of the water and rise up and turn and look at the camera. We were all kind of, we didn't know how we were going to accomplish this. And the design that had come up with just couldn't be executed on set. That day, or sorry, that day and night that we were shooting in the greater, so it's called the GVRD rainforest, and a lot of the wood scenes and forest scenes, a lot of those were shot in this GVRD rainforest, and it's a beautiful place. And it's a preserve, so they're very stringent about what goes on there. Where you can walk even, and it was raining the whole time. I think it was maybe March, maybe late February, so pretty cold and rainy. It rained all day, and then we got to having to try and puppeteer this thing on set, and it just wouldn't happen. And Mike and I were there, and production pretty much yelled at us in our faces for like 40 minutes about this effect that just couldn't work whatsoever. And we're just employees, like we're given, a design. We don't have much say in what's happening. So it was what we had to work with. And unfortunately, it was one time that we did fail to show, and just being out in the rain. And yeah, I did that episode for I think I had nightmares for probably 3 or 4 days after that episode of being out in the rain. It was just a really, really grueling, bad day. In the end, when you watch the episode, you'll see that they actually did Big Blue as CGI. So that CGI at the end, that was supposed to be our effect. And so it just didn't end up happening. And, I think for all of the effects that we did do and did manage to pull off, one, even though it was a pretty major effect, one effect not happening wasn't the end, wasn't the end for us or anything like that. But it was probably the hardest episode that I ever worked on.
I was I was wondering about because the X-Files is so known and loved for the practical effects, and there's some CG, of course there's some CG, and I was wondering, how did you guys end up blending the practical with the CG? And now you just answered my question in Quagmire that they ended up using the CG monster. But what about episodes like Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose? Because as I understand, there was a mixture of both practical effects and CG. So maybe if you can tell us something about that, or you weren't working on that.
Clyde wasn't, that was before my time, but so Matt Beck was the visual effects supervisor for the show. I think that was his title. I'm pretty sure that was his title. He did something I can talk more towards is green screen and blue screen when we were José Chung. So he directed all of our scenes that we did with blue screen and things like that. Clyde Bruckman, if I'm remembering correctly, is the when he's having the dream and his body is yeah. So yeah. That was a mixture of some visual effects and also, we had a gelatin body, like what I was talking about. And again, this is before my time, but I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, they just used a heat gun and basically, they sped up the film as well as some visual effects that they added in to have that decomposing, really at a fast, high rate of speed kind of thing.
That's amazing. A heat gun. This is you got it. You heard it here, folks. They used a heat gun to have Clyde Bruckman's body decompose in his dream. I never would have thought of that.
I mean, it was an interesting time because, like you're saying, visual effects and CGI was kind of starting to really, come into film more. Obviously, Industrial Light and Magic and other companies had done amazing visual effects and things for films forever, but television, I think, was a little bit of a new ground for as far as what they were pushing. And this is something that I talked about at the convention, and what I feel was a very special time for television during that period. And Fox had a lot of huge shows that really pushed the envelope as far as censorship, as far as budgets, as far as just really broke the mold for TV. And I think what we see today on TV is all a product of Chris Carter, Matt Groening, all of these creators back then that were really pushing the envelope of TV. And I think that helped, again, balloon budgets and things like that. But, people were asking us at the time, like, do you guys think you guys are going to lose your jobs to CGI? Because, as far like that was the future. That was the way everything was going to go. It was all going to be computer generated. And I think when you look at TV like 1994, 1995, maybe even 93, and the CGI is like, when it doesn't really stand up today. And it does get better and better as it goes along. But now I think you're seeing a perfect marriage of practical effects and visual effects. When I love people, I still buy physical DVDs and Blu-rays because I love the behind the scenes stuff. Everything that I get, as long as it's got some behind the scenes features, I'll watch all that stuff. And I'd been out of the film industry and the special effects industry for, quite a long time. And to see recently, like the Marvel movies are just one example, watching the behind the scenes of those. And I was blown away because so many things that I thought would be visual effects were actually practical effects that were there, explosions and stuff that they were doing. I thought all that stuff would be CGI now, like they just wouldn't have explosions for the safety of, the crew and actors and things. But I think now we're seeing a really, really great marriage and a happy medium, where back in that point, they were trying out a lot of new stuff that had never been done before. And, you get what you pay for, but at that point, I think maybe some people were over promising what they could pull off. And again, it eventually worked itself out. So it was very cool again to be there at that time, to be kind of part of that whole, I don't know if it's a revolution, but it was, definitely an updating of the entire TV making process, I'd say.
Well, I'm very glad that you said that it was you who said that it was guys like Chris Carter and Matt Groening that really pushed the envelope, and it's to these guys that that TV owes its sort of magic and greatness today, because that's what I keep saying on my social media, is that without the X-Files, we wouldn't have all these shows that we have today. And I'm not just saying that as a fan, but what I'm also thinking about what you said, this whole the perfect marriage between the visual effects and the practical effects. I would say, from my perspective as just a moviegoer and a viewer, I can tell when something is done on location, when something is practical, and it just looks better, and you're able to connect with the movie or the TV show more if the effects are practical, or like most of them are practical. It's just I don't know, the connection between the audience and the what they're watching is stronger if the effects are at least, well, partially practical, as opposed to just being CGI.
Right, right. Back to it, like when Chris Carter was, like, when these episodes were airing, and I mean, it took a while. Like I think X-Files didn't really start to get out around the world until syndication happened. Um, but for the United States and Canada, as the episodes were airing, North American television has standards and practices. So while the episode was playing, Chris Carter would be getting phone calls from this woman at standards and practices, and like you shouldn't be showing that, or you can't show that, or all these kind of things. We get faxes after the episode saying the blood is too red, you can't show dead people with their eyes open. So when again, now when you think about TV today and the blood is too red and you can't show dead people, I mean, they show dead people completely blown apart now, like all the gore and everything, and the blood is certainly red enough. But back in the day, that was kind of the things that he was pushing against, to again, just it really broke open TV. You think of other shows that came after that, like Battlestar Galactica reboot, even any of the medical shows, things like that. Like all of those things, again, really push the envelope for what we can see and what we do see today on television and film.
Let's talk about Jose Chung's. Let's go back to talking about Jose Chung's, because when you reached out to me on Twitter and you said that you were one of the aliens in Jose Chung's, I was just like starstruck. And so you mentioned that they approached you and said, would you like to be in the episode? And of course you said yes. Now my question is, how, and I'm sure you've been asked this question many times before, but this is the first time you're on this show, so I have to ask, how uncomfortable was that suit?
It wasn't very uncomfortable. It wasn't even so much of a suit. So what we had was foam latex alien heads, which so Mike, Doug, and I played three specific aliens. And if you know the episode and how it's set up, in the UFO later on, the three aliens that are kind of in the foreground are representing the hypnotist, Mulder, and Scully. And also, you have to bear in mind the fact it's a really mind-messing episode, and when you think outside of what's really happening. So we're not actually aliens. We're actually the fighter pilots that are flying the UFOs. So those were the aliens that we played, and then there were some background aliens as well. So the background aliens, they wore like a unitard that was airbrushed the alien skin color, and then they had a foam head. I think they had some like finger appliances on, but what we had as the main aliens, our heads had some animatronics in it, so our eyes would blink. And for our arms, we had these foam latex gloves that almost came up to just about our elbows. And then our fingers, the alien fingers were probably about 5 to 10 centimeters longer than our actual fingers. So you couldn't really grab anything because your fingers were all floppy. And then we were wearing spandex bicycle shorts. That was basically, and then we wore, so the insulation for your winter boots, the thing you can pull out, those were our alien booties. That's what we wore on our feet. And our bodies and the gloves and our heads and our spandex bicycle shorts were all airbrushed the alien gray color. This took about an hour and a half to get us into the costume, which is not really that bad in terms of, how long some people have to sit in a chair for makeup for. some things like we couldn't see anything. As soon as we put on the heads, the eyes would fog up, so you couldn't see out of the eyes. I could see I could see a little pinhole through my nose, like the nose, in the mask. I could just see a little hole out through that. We really couldn't, open our mouths to eat anything. So our friends on our crew would feed us crackers and cheese and little bits of food that we could put inside of our alien mouths. So in terms of being uncomfortable or comfortable, like I think the longest I was in my suit for one day was probably over 12 hours that I was in, because I think I did 3 locations that day because I was the alien. So for me, in my part in the show, in the opening sequence, when the boy and girl are on the road, the car breaks down, the light comes on. I'm the alien on the passenger side that comes to the door. Doug is on the driver's side, and he's the alien that reaches in. Um, this was all shot kind of like, I mean, they do pickup shots, they go back and reshoot things. So the scene where they're being dragged on the road, where we're dragging them towards our UFO, that was done later. So Doug couldn't be there. So instead of me being on the passenger side, I'm on the driver's side. So I'm dragging the driver, and an extra that we had named Cornelius, he's dragging the girl. So it's a little bit complicated in filming there where I'm at. So I'm first in the passenger side, then I'm on the driver's side dragging him. When Lord Kinboat, comes at us on the road, and we turn around, and Jack, what the hell is that thing? That's what Doug says, and I say how the hell should I know? Now, those aren't our voices. Those are actually the voices of the fighter pilots that you see later on in the episode. The one of them ends up, I think, dead. Actually, I think they all end up dead, don't they? At the end of it, yeah. But that's basically who we are, is actually those people. And then so later on in filming, the girl, when she's in her bed and she opens up her eyes and she has the blood coming out of her nose, and she sees the alien lunge at her at the foot of her bed, that's me. So that was all filmed that one day. There was some shots that we did out on location. Then we went to a house that was also another location. During the filming of that, I was kneeling down in front of her bed for so long that when they said, when they wrapped shooting kind of thing and said you could get up, I actually couldn't get up because my legs had fallen asleep because I'd been in this position for like so long shooting. And then I couldn't see where I was going. And when we were coming out of the property, the guy who was leading me walked me right into a pole, like a wooden pole, and like my head like rang off that pole. So there's these little things that happen. One of the worst things that happened during filming for me, for José Chung, and it's a very difficult position to be in, especially when have an idea of how much money everything is costing as something is being filmed. And I had my alien head on, and I rarely, if ever, get headaches. And I started to get a headache, and the headache was building and building and building to the point where I was like feeling sick. And I didn't want to complain. I didn't want to say, hey, something's wrong. We got to stop. We got to take this head off. But it got to the point where I had to, like, I was, almost the point of tears, because it was so much pain that I was experiencing. And I said to Charlie Grant, who was one of the guys who worked with us, I said, Charlie, and I said, I'm sorry, but we have to take something is really wrong with my head. And so when we took my head off, the battery pack for the servos that operated the eyes had slid forward and had been pressing into my skull. And when we took the head off, like, I had a square indentation in my forehead where the battery pack had been pressing into my head. So I felt bad that I had to do it, but obviously glad that I did it. But that was just maybe only one incident that I had. I did almost actually catch fire one night, because we're outside filming in this location. Like I said, the GVRD rainforest was where they filmed that whole road scene where the boy and the girl are abducted. We weren't wearing anything really. So after every take, they would usually put on two house coats, these big house coats, and then they'd throw on this big, huge winter parka. And like we couldn't see, we could barely hear. So it's kind of a weird, like people just do things. Like somebody would be like, okay, look over here, and then there'd be a flash and somebody's taking a picture of you, and it's like you can't tell that it's going to happen because you can't see what's going on. So the next one of the days after filming, Toby said, hey, they're charging us for this winter parka that got melted. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And we looked at the parka, and somebody had taken me and stood me in front of a propane heater to keep me warm. And I mean, I didn't know how close or far I was from the heater. It felt warm. That's all I know. But I'm wearing like two house coats and a parka, and I couldn't see how close I was, but I was so close to the heater that it actually melted the front of the parka. And so production was wanting to charge us for that parka because we had ruined it, kind of thing. And I was just like, I'm sorry, but I had no idea. Like I can't see jack in this thing. So yeah, I'm sorry. Another incident that happened with being blind, they put us in a van, me and Cornelius, and somebody turned on the heat, like they cranked up the heat in the van, and they just shut the door and left us in there. And it got so hot that Cornelius like fell asleep. Like, I mean, he's probably tired anyways, but he fell asleep from the heat. And with the big, silly, floppy alien fingers, I couldn't I couldn't see the controls to turn the heat. I couldn't open the door with my floppy, hands. So again, like, you don't want to complain, but there were some little things that we went through that are really kind of funny now, looking back at it. I mean, they were funny then, even like when I'm like trying to like, I'm laughing as I'm trying to slap the heat off with my floppy alien hands, kind of thing. So it was amazing, an absolutely amazing experience. We didn't get any name credit in the credits for our role. There's nothing about us as aliens. There's no indication that we were aliens whatsoever. The little pieces of my costume that I did have, the X-Files Museum now actually has those. But I did have the alien booties. I would have loved to have had one of the José Chung heads, of course, but never had that. But yeah, no, it was absolutely amazing and brilliant time. My buddy Mike, he got to play the famous cigarette smoking alien. So yeah, he's there's a Randy Bowen model kit of Mike, as the smoking alien. At the X-Files convention, a couple of people actually brought that model kit with them and asked me to sign it. And I was like, I'm sorry to tell you, but it wasn't me. I'd love to sign it for you, but just know that wasn't me. That was my buddy Mike. That was, the smoking alien kind of thing. So, the funny thing about that is that I'm a smoker, and Mike wasn't a smoker. Mike didn't smoke cigarettes at all. So why he got to be the smoking alien, he was just kind of like one of Toby's number one guys. So he got the bigger roles than we did. So that was all good. Just again, being an alien on the X-Files, yeah, I just still blows my mind.
Well, there've been a lot of aliens on the show and in the first movie. So a lot of types of aliens and species, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, the aliens from José Chung, they're the most iconic ones from the show. It's the aliens that the fans still remember the most. Those three, even though they're not the real aliens. They're just, fighter pilots in
Yeah, yeah,
costumes,
yeah.
but they are this, the iconography, as far as iconography goes, these are the ones that we'll remember the most.
And I mean, as far as X-Files or episodes go, I mean, it was one of the more comedic. Some people just don't even get the episode whatsoever. They can't figure out what's going on with it. But yeah, just an amazing and classic X-Files episode to be part of. I think right up there with some of the more legendary ones like Home, and yeah, some of the bigger, more popular episodes. I think he's definitely up there in people's favorites list.
It really is. It really is. And it's one of my favorite episodes. Well, I mean, I'm a sucker for the more surreal, mind-bending stories. And of course, if I'm not mistaken, Darren Morgan wrote that episode.
I think so. Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so he was the one who was responsible for the more mind-blowing ones. And I was just thinking about the reason I asked you about how uncomfortable or hot were these costumes, because Darren Morgan, who wrote a lot of the X-Files episodes, he also played the Fluke Man in season 2, the host.
Yeah.
And the story goes is that his costume was very hot and very uncomfortable, and that he was very, very miserable in that costume, and he had to be in it for many hours. So as far as like being in costume and makeup goes, I think, well, what you're describing is it was it was difficult, but it was not the worst.
Oh no, 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 definitely not. Like there's definitely, I mean, I think Darren in the Flute Man costume, like he had to perform in water, which would be even more grueling because a lot of that stuff, I trying to remember what they used for Flute Man's skin at the time, but any of that older stuff, once it becomes waterlogged, and that's the beauty of silicone is silicone is pretty waterproof. It's super lightweight. It's not as when we were working with like foam latex, a lot of people have latex allergies, and some people
Mm.
don't even know that they have latex allergies until they get latex on their face, and then all of a sudden their face is breaking out. Yeah, it's a really hard thing to do. An example that I'll talk about of where it can, I don't know if you go wrong. And Nicholas Leah, I love the man. He was absolutely wonderful to work with. So Nick Leah went through a process where, if you remember, he gets the alien inside of him, the black oil. And there's a scene where he's at the UFO, and it's all coming out of his eyes, nose, and
Right.
mouth. So for that, Nick read the script. He saw that this is what was going to happen. Production said to Nick, "This is going to be extremely uncomfortable. We recommend that somebody else do this." Nick said, "No, I want to do it." When Nick got to the shop before we did the face cast, we said, "Nick, this is going to suck. This is going to be really, really, really not fun." And he was like, "Nope, I want to do it." So Nick's appliance really wasn't too. It was elaborate, but not elaborate. All it was his, a foam appliance of his face, and then it had all kinds of tubes that ran into his eyes, nose, and mouth through, but it came up through his hair, and the tubes came back into like kind of a bundle of tubes that all ran to a pressure cooker, and the pressure cooker was what we used to control the ooze going through the tubes and coming out of his mouth. So getting Nick into this with all of these tubes and everything was not fun. I don't think it was too long of a process to get him in. I wasn't on set when they did this gag, but I know very much about everything that happened. So they got Nick on set. They put this on him, and when you're filming, things take time. We know very, very well. You're going to be next. Nope, you're bumped. You're going to be next. You're bumped. You're going to be next. Bumped. So they kept on bumping Nick. He was very uncomfortable in this. He started to get agitated about it. And they were like, okay, you're next, Nick. We're going to do this next. Half an hour later, we're breaking for lunch. And Nick lost it, like lost it. He was like kicking, throwing, like he had a tantrum on set. And while he's doing this appliance is still on his face with all of these tubes. And Charlie is carrying the pressure cooker behind him as Nick is like freaking out. And yeah, so he was warned. I'm sure that I'm sure he probably ended up in the end had a great time in some ways, but he maybe a little bit of a lesson learned. Like it's not, and that's why a lot of stunt people end up doing a lot of the gags because they're just more used to being put through rigorous processes, have a lot more patience, and really a lot of times understand the process of, what it takes to get them in and out of these suits and that kind of thing. So makeup effects is not for everybody. We've done face casts where people have, gotten claustrophobic and we've had to break them out of, during a face cast. So it's not for everybody. And to wear one of those suits like Tony Morelli was the stuntman who wore the Lord Kimboat big Cyclops suit. That was a huge, huge foam latex suit. And he was also standing on these big stilt legs that we built for him that were these goat legs. So he was in that for quite a long time. And my hat always went off. I stunt people are among the best, my most favorite people to work with on set because they literally put their lives in each other's hands every day. And trust to them is such a huge thing. And because of that trust, relationships that they have with people are just like really super tight because they trust, they really got to put their trust into people and what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, we love the actors that play all the parts, but I have such respect and admiration for everyone, for like the stunt people and the makeup artists and the writers and, everyone who is behind the scenes on set, who is contributing to this experience, to this magic. I was actually going to ask you about the Lord Kinboat effect because I thought, well, I didn't know what it was, but I kind of thought that it was an animatronics thing, that it was just a model, like a claymation. Turns out it's a guy in a suit. It's just amazing.
Are you familiar with Ray Harryhausen?
No,
So Ray Harryhausen, so the movie, the old Sinbad movies that they had where they're fighting the skeletons,
right.
the Clash of the Titan movie.
Oh, yeah. I
So
loved those
Ray,
growing up.
so Ray Harryhausen was the guy who did the models and the stop motion animation for those films. And Lord Kimboat, and what you said is actually perfect because that's what they wanted people to think and kind of flash back to. That was an homage to Ray Harryhausen and his stop motion. What they did was is when they filmed it, I believe that they removed different cells to make it look like it was stop motion. So and that was exactly the effect that they were going for, was for
Wow.
people to think like that it wasn't a real thing, it was a Ray Harryhausen model kind of thing. So that's a huge compliment you're paying the show and to our work. And that's great for you to actually say that because a lot of people knew that it was just a guy in a suit kind of thing. But yeah, that was Tony Morelli in that great big huge monster suit. We did a blue screen shooting with him where he's like swinging at us and we're ducking. If you watch the behind the scenes DVD or Blu-ray for José Chung, they're actually talking, I think, with Rob Morrow and with Matt Beck, and talking about actually working with us and about how inexperienced we were because we weren't actors. We were a bunch of guys from the effects shop. So this is my very first time ever doing anything like that whatsoever, aside from, the stuff that Mike would practice on me, but it's not like I was ever in front of a camera being directed or anything like that. But there was a lot of humor that was happening when we were filming the blue screening stuff, just with Tony in this big suit, and then Doug and I in our alien costumes, and them trying to direct us. And yeah, it was again just more fun times. I've got a bunch of this stuff was all recorded on video. My buddy Mike, who I mentioned, we had gotten a video camera pretty much when we started working on the show, and we've got hours and hours and hours of behind the scenes footage, both from the shop, and it amazed us, but they allowed us to film our gags on set. We weren't allowed to film David or Jillian or any of the big stars, but as long as we were filming our gags, they were actually cool with it. And sometimes they would actually even look through the camera just to see what it looked like, like to them, like through this different camera kind of thing. So I've been trying to get that stuff converted over, because I'd love to share that with people. I've got some little clips here and there that I've tried, but the VHS tapes that I've got are so old that they're getting eaten inside of my VCRs. And so now I'm actually scared to even continue, because I don't want to lose that footage. But yeah, just just so amazing. And again, like I just have to thank Toby, Linda, and my buddy Mike. Without them, I wouldn't have ever had those experiences to work on, again, what ended up being the #1 television show on the planet, and also to have the experience of working on Millennium as well, to work with Lance Henriksen, because we were like huge fans. And Lance has been in everything from Close Encounters to Pumpkinhead, countless things. So to be able to work with him, Aliens, yeah, Aliens. Yeah, Lance, if you look at Lance's IMDb and what he's done, and yeah, so to work with those people, just absolutely amazing.
Well, first of all, I really hope that you will find a way to share that footage that you were talking about, because I would love to see it, and I just know that there are like millions of X-Files fans who would love to see this rare behind the scenes footage. And to the listeners, when I rant on my Instagram about how X-Files is a work of art, this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is a guy in a suit, a stunt person in a suit, but they remove the cells so that the effect looks like it's stop motion. Who thinks of these things? This is art. This is an artistic process. This isn't just like filming something. This is making a work of art. And this is why we love the show still, like 30 years later. Okay.
And it was,
yeah.
I was just going to say, it was so cool. Every week, every Friday, and then I think it moved to Sunday, but every week to be able to sit down and watch what you've been working on. Yeah, again, just mind blowing to see, how it looked in the end, and to know that, millions of people are looking at something that you had a hand in creating is, again, yeah, just mind blowing.
It's a dream for a creative person. It's a dream. Let's talk some more about, because I have to, Nick Lee, because the story that you just told us about his little tantrum, we talked about this on Twitter before. Now, this is especially funny to me because he told this story to us when we met him at the X-Files Museum in 2022, and we're asking him about his memories, most memorable moments on the show, and he was talking about this particular day when all of this happened, when he kept getting bumped and then everyone went for lunch, and he was just telling the stories like, oh my God, I was so miserable. And it was so uncomfortable, but then they just left for lunch and they just left me. And I never would have thought that he actually threw a tantrum. Uh, but
He was pretty mad.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I can imagine. But also, he would always, I mean, not always, but when he could, he would do his own stunts because you think that he would have learned his lesson after that episode, but in the next season in Tunguska, they had him hanging off a balcony, this like 20-story balcony, and he did it himself, and he loved doing it. So I guess he just loves doing his own stunts. He just loves doing all the crazy hard work.
Well, and I think, I mean, obviously for an actor, and being able to do all of those things just helps you for your career, right? Like
Right.
if they don't have to bring in a body double or a stunt man because you're going to do it, then hey, that's awesome, right? And again, like for him, like I can say, like I can look at this X-Files episode and say, hey, that's me. I did all that stuff. That wasn't somebody else who did it. So I can definitely understand what he's saying. And then on the other end, just production side, as having someone who's a valued actor, if something does go wrong and they're injured, that can delay filming, all the bad things that can happen if something does go wrong. And I think that's really where production is looking at it from, is like, it's really great. Tom Cruise does his own stunts, but I'm sure the insurance company, the insurance on Tom Cruise has got to be absolutely astronomical because he chooses to do these things.
Right.
Like, I'm sure they must be like, Tom, like, you shouldn't do this, but that's Tom Cruise, right? Like he wants to do that stuff. And a lot of, again, going back to the Marvel movies, and they talk about how a lot of those actors and actresses will do their own stunts and have the physical abilities to do those things, even right up to like Keanu Reeves and the John Wick stuff. Um, that they have these abilities, that they've taken the time to learn these arts, to learn how to fall, to learn how to, throw a fake punch, to take a fake punch, all of this stuff. Again, it helps them, but again, I can understand like production side kind of why they would be anxious about having their
Right.
star actors, principal actors and actresses putting themselves at risk when, so much money is involved in this whole thing.
Yeah, there's definitely a sort of balance that has to be achieved. There's somewhere between the insurance companies and the actors themselves and the creative people. This actually reminds me of now complete tangent, but Die Hard, when they filmed Hans Gruber's death scene. I think it was the last one they filmed with Alan Rickman, and he did his own stunt, and I think that they they said that we're gonna count to three and then we're gonna drop you, and they counted to two and then they dropped him. So the reaction you see on Alan Rickman's face is the real one. It's the real
Legit.
deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they seem to like to do that to people. I don't know. They seem to get their kicks out of like the same thing with I think when they were filming Alien and the chest burster scene, like they didn't tell them when it was going to happen. So the shock that you get
Right.
is real legit shock. And I can get that. I know a lot of actors and actresses kind of shake their fists, but it kind of gets them what they wanted, right?
Yeah, it's a totally, a different level of authenticity. I just don't know, like, would that Alan Rickman stunt, would it work today, or would just get like called to human resources and be told that you can't do that to an actor?
I don't know. Good question.
Okay, so we've covered José Chung, and we've covered. I especially wanted to just circle back to Nick Lee because, as my listeners know, I love Nick Lee and I love Krychek. He's my favorite bad guy ever. Um, so let's talk about Saratoga Springs, because you
Sure.
mentioned that that was your first first convention ever. Have you
Yep.
attended any conventions before as a fan, or was this your first, like,
When when I
ever?
lived in when I lived in Vancouver, we'd gone down to Los Angeles a couple of times for the San Diego Comic-Con. Um, so I'd been to the Comic Con before. And I knew from the setup of Comic Cons that they usually have, like, sci-fi, action, adventure, a lot of guests and do panels and all those kind of things. But really, and for, like, even as far as I know, my old co-workers at the shop, none of us have ever been asked to do, like, even podcasts and things like this. Like, I know a lot of them haven't ever done these things. And so Saratoga Springs, what happened is I had a bunch of X-Files props, old props that we had, and some memorabilia, like clothing, winter wear, things like that. I had Big Blue. I had his great big head. And so at one point, Toby's shop that we had in downtown Vancouver, we needed to move shops, and we moved to a different shop. This is crazy. I'm never too sure why he did this. We never quite understood why it was happening. But when we were moving shops, a lot of stuff went into the garbage, into the bins.
Oh,
Yeah. And some of that stuff, we were just like, I mean, like, again, I wish I would have grabbed my head from Jose Chung. Um, the Big Blue head was there. I had such, anger at that episode that I was like, you're coming with me and you're going to sit in my living room so I can be reminded of you all the time. So for years, Big Blue sat in my living room. People be like, why do you have a dinosaur head in your living room? Um, but I had a lot of stuff here, and a friend of my buddy Mike Fields. Um, so there obviously there's fans out there like yourself, and there's collectors who are looking for pieces of the show. So there was a guy from Los Angeles who was looking for, any of us that might have props and stuff from the show. So I got in touch with him, and he bought a couple of my props. One of the props that he got was the doll head from Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose, when he's seeing the dolls, and you see the doll that's all kind of bloated and everything. He got a copy of that from me. And I think he got one of the alien heads from, oh shoot, I'm forgetting the episode. It was the great big body pile of aliens, the kids that they shot in the pit, and there's all those aliens that are there. He
right.
was one of those, basically one of those alien heads that was from that. So after I sold those things to him, he was saying, do you have anything else? And I let him know what I had, and he wasn't interested in those. But he said, I know these people at this X-Files museum who might be interested in it. And I'd never even heard of the X-Files museum. I had no idea that anything, you know, existed at all. And then to find out what they do and what they have, just mind blowing. So he put me in touch with Jim and Kelly from the X Files Museum. We did a bunch of Zoom meetings, and I showed them, what I had, and they asked me if, they could have these things for the museum, and absolutely. As much as I've had some things in my home, I'm a single guy, so it's not like people are seeing it. It's just here in my, some stuff was up in my attic. So the opportunity to have a place like the X Files Museum, where they're not just, selling this stuff on the eBay or whatever, getting the highest price for amazing props that they have, that they want to actually keep the memory of the show. So to have that stuff go unseen in my attic, for people to be able to see that, meant a lot to me. And it was, yeah, so that's how I met Jim and Kelly. And then they asked me, they said, we're having this convention in the summer. Would you like to come down? And not to dismiss, my role on the show. But I'm not a special effects makeup artist. It's not my background. My ending up on the X-Files was almost completely accidental. Why would you even want to talk to me, kind of thing? Yes, yes, I did have a hand in making a lot of incredible props, and had my hands on some of the great creatures in season 3, 4, and part of 5. But again, I was just this small guy. I'm not on, I'm not on the internet under the IMDb. I don't do this for a living anymore. So I was kind of like, why would you want to talk to me, kind of thing. But I do realize that I've got some really incredible stories, and also realizing, like I said, no one's ever asked any of us, as far as I know, for any of these conventions. They've only ever gone after, the stars or some of the other principal actors and actresses. But a lot of, and I mean, some of the writers and directors, producers. But as for people who actually like special effects or makeup or lighting or set deck, none of those people have ever been asked to go to these conventions. So I realized it was an opportunity for me to be able to share my story and stories with people, with you fans. And once they announced that I was going to be a guest at the convention, and I really started to get a sense of how huge the fandom is for the X-Files. At one point, it was overwhelming, because, like, I'd make a post, and hundreds of people would be replying, and this is not attention that I'm used to. So it was a little scary and a little daunting, but I'm a people person. I love to tell stories. I was a musician. I was a songwriter. So I love talking to people. So being asked to come down and to share my stories with the fans, absolutely my pleasure. And I hope that I can come back. I would love to go to any of the other conventions if they would like to have people come out. I'd be totally game to come down and talk about my experience on the show, because again, I very, very, very fortunate to be part of something that became a global success, like something that's like Elvis or the Beatles or Metallica or whatever. It's one of those names that people say and exactly what it is. Like, even young kids today, you can say the X-Files and they may not have watched it, but they know what it is. So yeah, to be again part of that, and then years later, and not to say that we didn't get recognition for what we did, but again, like, none of us were listed in the credits. I mean, we went to the rap parties, and we met a lot of people that were fans that said, well, they loved what they do and things like that. But for years later, to meet fans, people that grew up, that were just little kids that were watching the show. I've had people told me that, you scared the hell out of me as the alien on, like, I had nightmares because of you as the alien on that episode. And I mean, again, it's funny and it's great. I'm sorry I gave you nightmares, but that's part of their childhood now. And you are part of their childhood, because you were the person who did this kind of thing. So it's really mind blowing. You wouldn't even have imagined that it would have been like this. Oops, sorry, I did that alarm go off there.
I didn't hear anything, but I mean, like,
Okay.
you're almost making me tear up right now. Like, when you're telling the story, it's, I am just so happy that you were invited to the X-Files Museum, and that you get to share the story, because, like I said, actors and stars are great and we love them, but it's really the people behind the scenes, really the people that are, doing the practical work and, like, making stuff with their hands, that deserve so much recognition. And I'm so happy, that you're here on this show too, uh, talking, telling the story. And like I said, I'm completely starstruck, and I'm, like, very nervous right now, because I'm talking to uh, like a person who was on the X-Files. Like, I have, this is my third interview, and I interviewed two of my friends who are also X-Files adjacent, also X-Files fans, but this is the first time I get to speak to someone who was on the show and who was responsible for some of like I said, some of the magic of the show. So this is a huge honor for me.
I've been I've been kind of, I don't know if weirded out is the right word, but when I joined up a lot of like when I came onto Twitter, now X, and I'm temporarily off of Facebook for a while, but on my Facebook account, like when I started joining up with these groups and everything, and I just kind of lost my train of thought there. Just give me a second here. Again, like it was kind of overwhelming, the amount of people that were happy to have me there. That's what I was going to say. So, but I threw out there, like I've thrown out a bunch of times on Twitter, and I'm part of a bunch of different X-Files groups and things, that if you want to talk to me, if you got a question about an episode or something that we did or something that you saw in any episode of season 3, 4, or 5, by all means, send me a note, like ask me, like I'm totally cool. And nobody has asked me any questions about anything. You're the first person since Jim and Kelly. There were a couple of local podcasts in my town here, that when they found out that I was going to be going down to the convention, that they wanted to have me on just to talk about, my experience and all that kind of thing. But as far as any other X-Files fans or any of the other conventions or anything like that, I've not heard anything from anybody. I do wonder if it's because, like, I mean, when I say Mike Fields, or if I say Leanne Padavin or Jeff Redknapp, if you Google any of those names, those are people that are in the IMDb, and they've got all of their stuff listed. I mean, Mike is still one of my best friends. Mike Fields is his name. After this, if you IMDb him, like, you will be absolutely, if you're starstruck by talking to me, you might even be starstruck by talking to me, and that this guy knows this guy who worked on all of these other shows, because Mike has gone on. Mike is probably one of the top makeup, and I may be a little bit biased because he is one of my best friends, but he is one of the most talented special effects makeup artists in Canada, and maybe the top on the West Coast. He's very much in demand, and he's worked on everything from the Star Trek movies to Stargate, to Poltergeist, The Legacy, X-Files. His list is just Buffy the Vampire Slayer, all kinds of stuff. Like, Mike has done so much. So that's what I wonder, is if people go, well, Chris Waddell, and they type in Chris Waddell X-Files and nothing comes up. Well, is this guy telling the truth? Is he who he is, says he is? There's nothing to really back up that I worked on the show, kind of thing. And I kind of understand that too. Like, I mean, again, I'm not Mike Fields. I'm not a professionally trained special effects makeup artist. So if somebody that's a fan, or somebody who's putting on one of these conventions, they might be looking for someone more like Mike or Leanne or Jeff or Toby Lindola, some of the top people, instead of us kind of smaller people. Again, not to diminish the role that I had on the show. Like, after I left the shop, there's people that came in and started working for Toby, and they got a hold of me, and they were like, man, like, you guys are the reason why we got into special effects makeup. Watching what you guys did is why I'm doing what I'm doing now. And so those kind of compliments, I mean, it's just amazing that people tell you that. Again, it completely almost accidental that I was part of this whole thing. But I tried to fit in. I tried to do and learn, everything as best that I could, and to make myself an asset part of the shop. And yeah, just again, an amazing time. We have so many amazing memories. We worked with David Hasselhoff. Fox Television did Nick Fury. You can actually find this on YouTube. It's a Fox television production of Nick Fury with David Hasselhoff playing Nick Fury. So we did all of the effects for that. So working with David Hasselhoff was, to have the Hoff walk into your shop was pretty cool too. I got a picture of him with all of us together and everything. And we did some other shows. We also did work on Poltergeist: The Legacy. We also did work on the Antonio Banderas movie, Eaters of the Dead, also called The 13th Warrior.
I haven't seen it, but I know of it.
It's actually one of my favorite movies. And we only had a very small piece of it, what I called in the summertime when we weren't working on the X-Files, when they went on a hiatus, we would pick up like little bits and pieces of movies that were being shot, just to keep on giving us some work and have us work for the summer. So we didn't do, I don't even know if we're in the credits for 13th Warrior, but we just did some, there's a bunch of cannibals that are in that movie. And so we did a bunch of fake meat that they're eating. And so we did stuff like that, like over the summer. So there's little other bits and pieces that are out there that have work that we did.
Wow. Well, there you go, folks. Chris Waddell, there. Okay, I'm just saying it. There are so many X-Files podcasts right now. Some of them that I follow. There's Chris Waddell. He has stories to tell about his time on the X-Files, about being one of the aliens, about working on the special effects, about, I mean, stories for days and for years. So there you go. And also, I was just thinking, this is where my mind went because I'm a writer, but with all the stories you have about the X-Files, why don't you write a book?
You're not the first person to say that. And just to talk about myself here a little bit off the side of the whole X-Files thing. I've been very fortunate throughout my life. Like I said, my background was in music. I grew up, I started my first band when I was 14. And then later on, what my profession was, or what my forte was actually in live lighting and sound, like doing sound and lights for concerts, those kind of things. So that's what my background was. And when Toby needed some people on the show, I was in between jobs at the time. So that's why I'm so thankful for them. Mike and Toby at the time, I needed some help and they helped me out into something that once I left the X-Files, and this is where things get kind of, I think, a little bit ridiculous. I had a friend of mine who worked for Electronic Arts Canada, and Electronic Arts, as most people know, is a video game corporation. The one that's in Canada is called EA Sports. So EA Sports FIFA was one of the things that we did in Vancouver. They also did they did FIFA, they did hockey, they did NBA, they did the football, and they were a video game corporation. I had a friend of mine who worked there, and after I left the X-Files, he knew I was in between work, and I didn't want to go back in the film industry. I wanted to do something different, and he said, "Well, why don't you come work for EA?" And I said, "Well, I don't even own a gaming console. I'm not a gamer. I didn't own a computer. I knew a little bit about computers, but I didn't own one." And so he said, "Well, just come down and do an interview, and you could become a game tester." Basically was what he offered me to do. And game testing is a little bit more than just playing video games all day, but that's what a lot of people think it is. But so he said, "Come down and apply for this." So when I went down and applied for this, on my resume now was the X-Files. And as soon as I said that I worked on the X-Files, I was pretty much hired. Like it made no sense whatsoever. I always say, like, the X-Files and Electronic Arts are two jobs that I had absolutely no business, no education, no background, and I ended up there. And with electronic arts, because of what I did in special effects makeup. So EA, Electronic Arts, does a lot of things with motion capture. A lot of their models that they use in the video game back in the day were done through motion capture, which was at that time a very new technology. You couldn't go to school and learn motion capture. So when I got to EA, I didn't want to test video games for the rest of my life. So I started to look around in EA at something I thought I might be interested in, that they might teach me, or, just ask, kind of thing. So I met with the head of human resources for Electronic Arts. And so when I first got hired, this was just with the gaming guys. It's like just some, gaming nerds kind of thing. And they were like, oh my God, X-Files, X-Files. So when I met with the head of human resources, this was Don Matrick was the guy who started Electronic Arts in Canada. And this was actually, his mother was the head of human resources at the time. And when I went to see her, everybody in the gaming testing department was like, you're not going to get hired for anything. Like, gaming testers don't move up in the company. That doesn't happen. So when I went to see Mrs. Matrick at head of human resources, and I slid my X-Files portfolio in front of her again, she picks up the phone in front of me and calls Evan Hirsch, the guy who runs motion capture, and says, you have to meet this guy. You have to meet him. You have to sit down and meet with this guy. So again, the X-Files portfolio, just the X-Files, not relating to anything, but that's pretty much why I got the job at Electronic Arts. And I was lucky enough to be smart enough to look for something that I thought I could do. And then when I met with Evan Hirsch from the motion capture department, he saw that I was a brain that he could mold. He knew I had no experience, so he could teach me. And that's basically how I started my career in motion capture at Electronic Arts, was just, again, through the X-Files and through some bit of luck, I guess you could say. And yeah, so I've been very fortunate in my life to work in the entertainment industry. I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to be up on stage, and I wanted to sell 1 million albums. That never happened. The bands that I played in around my area, they have a good name, and I've got a little bit of a history here, so I'm very proud of that. Going out to Vancouver and all of those, like, I have no regrets. I've been very, very, very lucky. And I realize how lucky I was to be part of not only X-Files and Millennium, but also to work for like a huge company like Electronic Arts as well. So yeah, when you talk about writing a book, I got a lot I could write about. And really, it's just I've never written anything, that would be as big as a book. And to just the scope of it's kind of daunting. Like, where do I start? All of those questions of an indie writer, I have no idea where to begin. So I would love to do it, and maybe someday it'll happen.
I mean, you can definitely ask around. I mean, you can co-write with someone, do a collaboration with a more experienced writer, author. So like I mean, if it's something that now I'm just like trying to pitch you this idea of writing a book, but if it's something that you really say, decide for yourself, then I'm sure there's so many ways for you to make this a reality. I was just thinking about all the stories you have to tell, and the world needs to know more about these stories.
Before I went to the Saratoga convention, a friend of mine who's a local filmmaker around here, he actually caught wind that I was going to be going to the convention, and he actually pitched this idea of doing a documentary, and he knows like about my history with music and what I've done and all this stuff, but he actually pitched doing a documentary about my life and about me going to this, convention and stuff, but he ended up having to work on another movie, so that never happened. But
That would be awesome, actually. A documentary, a book. I mean, it's such an interesting life that you've had this, like you say that it's luck, I say it's serendipity, that you got to be on the X-Files, and then this thing led to that thing, and like then motion capture. And life rarely turns out the way we want it to. And like you said, you thought you were going to be a rock star, and instead you ended up being a part of one of the biggest phenomena in TV history, which is, it's just kind of cool. I mean, I would love to have you back on the show so we can talk more about Millennium, but first I'm gonna have to watch the show, because I ashamed to admit that I have not seen Millennium. I have not seen The Lone Gunman. They're on my to watch list. So I'm thinking, once I have seen Millennium, I would love to have you back on the show so we can talk more about working on, because I can imagine that the show is darker in tone, so maybe the effects were more gruesome
Oh my
than the ones.
goodness. Millennium was another one of those. I mean, almost every episode of Millennium, because they're dealing with serial killers and the Millennium and cults and things like that. So yeah, we did a lot of dead bodies for Millennium, and we were again shocked at. I mean, I remember one of Mike's drawings is like a woman who's basically quartered. She's in four pieces. Um, so again, for us, for TV and being asked to do, this kind of crazy stuff, we were over the rainbow. This was, the more blood and guts for us, the better. But it might have been Millennium. I think lasted 2 seasons for sure. I don't know if they had a third season or not.
I think too.
But the first season was really dark and was really more about the serial killer. The second season, they tried to be more about the Millennium myth and this conspiracy theory. And I just don't think that he ever found his footing between the cult stuff and the serial killer kind of thing. And I don't know if the audience was really, there or ready for something that dark. But it was a fantastic show, and we did some really, really cool effects for that show too. So yeah, I would love to come back and talk about Millennium, because
Absolutely.
Millennium, some things that I brought up when I was at the convention, when people were asking questions about stuff, there were some stories from Millennium that I brought up. Oh, my cat has decided to join me
Oh
here.
my God, is that your cat? I am sorry. What is the name of the kitty?
My cat's name is Elsa,
Hi,
and
Elsa. Oh my
I
God.
did not name her, and she's very mean. She's a very
She's very
mean cat.
mean. Oh, hi,
Oh my,
Elsa. How old is she?
she's like 15 now.
Oh, wow.
But
She's an old lady.
yeah, but ever since she was a kitty, she has pretty much attacked everybody in my family, all my friends, me. She's a little feisty, a little
Yeah.
feisty. She's
She's
getting she's
a
getting better in her old
spicy kitty.
age, but
A
yeah, she's a
spicy
spicy
kitty.
girl.
Oh, you just, I mean, people that have cats, like they're immediately like they're my people. Because
I'm a
I mean, I am allergic, so I can't have cats, but
oh.
like all of my friends have cats, and whenever like I'm visiting my friends, I'm just like, the cat, let me pet the cat. So this interview just got, I mean, like it was such a great interview, but it just got even better because because the kitty came on screen. Well, I mean, yes, I would absolutely love to have you back, and we can talk about Millennium and more stories about the X-Files and actors throwing tantrums and act like near accidents, like oh my God, it's just another day at the office. You go to work, you put on your alien costume, and you almost melt
Yeah.
alive in a car. But I mean, I can imagine that it's such a fun job, you know, to be working on special effects and makeup and all these like fake dead bodies and creatures. It's it must be very fun to work with that.
Music was a big part of the shop. We were all fans of pretty much around the same types of music, like, you know, heavy metal or punk rock, and alternative music. But music was huge at the shop. There's a Ramones song that's called "Making Monsters with My Friends," and that was really it couldn't sum up what we did any better, because we're just making monsters with our friends, and that's like all we were all buddies at the shop. We spent 6 7 days a week together, went through, you know, like kind of like a war, like, you know, the worst of times, best of times, the
Right.
toughest, craziest stuff to the funniest. You know, we had, yeah, such a blast there. And you know, it's at that time, I think today it's a little bit healthier than it was back then. People always ask me, you know, would you go back and do it? No, I wouldn't, because the effects of the time and the chemicals that we worked with, and again, like everything from latex ammonias, fiberglass, expandable foams, like all of these things have chemical, like they're all chemicals, and all of them affect you in one way or another. From, you know, grinding in the shop, like you're grinding fiberglass and there's fiberglass dust going everywhere. There's you know, dust from the molds, dust from the clay. There's and a lot of us were, you know, kind of unhealthy at the time, and that might have been like, you know, hours eating, and then just the things that we were working with, and that's why I think today, again, like the industry has progressed a lot. The silicone that you're working with is a lot healthier. It's not as toxic as working with latex foams, and those kind of things. So again, you know, there are good and bad things that happened. The good definitely outweigh the bad. But you know, it wasn't easy. It was a lot of hard work, and not just for us, for absolutely everybody, from whoever, you know, the smallest part of the crew to the biggest part of the crew. It was the time, and again, like whether it's, you know, something as iconic as Cheers or Married with Children, or again, it's just one of those names that's going to be in the history of entertainment for our planet, that we were all fortunate enough to be a part of. And then everybody that's a fan that was touched and, you know, learned or inspired by these episodes and by these characters and by these stories. It's, you know, it's just never ending. It's as huge as, you know, the Star Trek fans, or Star Wars fans, or, you know, any of that kind of fandom, Harry Potter or whatever. It's just as big, and it amazes me that it is just as big and just as fervent, and how much you guys all know about the show and about the episodes, and, you know, even about some of the stuff that we did. And then go to the X-Files Museum, and I mean, I was part of the show, and when, like, just to toot their horn, because I love Jim and Kelly. They were just such fantastic people, and I think Jim had said, like, what's at the X-Files Museum isn't even like 50 or 75% of what he actually has, and then he's got even more. And you think of the paperwork, you think of the recordings, you think of the like, just so much stuff that was done for this TV show, and the legacy that it has. Again, I think I've said mind blowing a number of times, but yeah, just absolutely mind blowing.
You know, I couldn't agree more with you. The love that the, you know, us fans have for the show, it's from, you know, Jim and Kelly opening this X-Files museum, and it's a labor of love. I mean, whatever they're charging for the tickets and for for these events, it's not enough. They're not doing it because they want to make millions of dollars. It's because they love the show and want to share it with the world. And to
Yep.
like all the fanfic writers who just write like hundreds of thousands of words of fan fiction for free, just because
Yeah.
they love these characters. And like to us podcasters, because we're not doing this for the money either. Like, I'm just doing this in my bedroom for no money, and I don't have any advertisers here. I'm just I'm doing this because I love the show. So it's a gift that keeps on giving. And it's kind of you're right, it's mind-blowing that it's like John Doggett said in season 9, one of the season 9 episodes about the Brady Bunch, like why are people watching a 30-year-old TV show? Well, there you go. I mean, like it's a 30-year-old TV show, and we're still watching it and we still love it. And there's a younger generation of fans that are just discovering it. So you're right. I mean, it's not going away. So it must feel pretty amazing to be part of history this way.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I mean, I'm just like, I live in my little small hometown here that I grew up in. And just for people that are listening, I'm in Atlantic Canada, and so I moved out to Vancouver on the Atlantic, or sorry, on the Pacific coast in 1994, and then in 2012 I moved back to my hometown here. And my hometown, like when we got nominated for an Emmy, like my hometown and CBC Radio Canada, they did like some stories on Mike and I, because we were these Canadian kids that came from New Brunswick, which is like, I mean, there's a lot of towns in Sweden I'd never heard of, but I
Right,
mean,
right.
Fredericton, New Brunswick, who's ever heard of that place? That these two young guys were able to come from Fredericton, go to Vancouver, and end up on this show that ended up, it was a big success story for two guys from where we live, kind of thing.
Right.
So not that I'm like not that I'm like some big star in my hometown or anything. That's kind of the funny thing is just like up until the X-Files convention, like I never had any attention about this before, right? So all the attention that I was getting, and then I go to the convention and meet all these fantastic people and have such a fantastic time, and then I come back to my little hometown where it's just like I'm just like another guy, right? Like I'm just some guy walking down the street. Nobody really knows that I just did this or what I've done, kind of thing. So it's neat. Again, yeah, it's such a special thing to have been part of, and yeah, just very, very blessed. Again, that and I can't thank. I can never thank Mike and Toby enough, because without them, again, without Toby doing this, you know, none of us would have been there, kind of thing. And Toby himself. So in season 1, Toby was just a special effects artist in Vancouver, not really doing much work at all. The person who originally had the contract to do the special effects makeup in season 1, they didn't get along with someone so well on the set. So they said to Toby, "Hey, I've got this show. Do you want to do this?" And Toby was like, "Yeah, okay." And season 1, nobody had any idea what was going to happen. So Toby really walked into it quite blind too. And you just never know. You never know with these kind of things what's going to happen. A pilot of a TV show. I've worked on some pilots that have never, nothing ever happened with them. They never even saw any airing on TV. So for something to go from a pilot, make it through its first season, and then snowball like it did. And again, I think that's a legacy to like Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, all of these huge, huge franchises that we have today. Again, without Chris Carter and those guys, none of that stuff would have happened. None of that stuff would have happened.
Couldn't agree more with you. Well, it's been such I mean, we've been talking for almost 2 hours. It does not feel like it just flew by. I would can
Yeah.
just like keep talking with you, like, for hours and hours on end. But I think that our listeners probably want to go and to do some other things
Yeah.
also, and you also have a life to return to. So, and it's been such a pleasure to have you on this show. Thank you so much. And like I said, I would love to have you back so we can talk some more and talk about Millennium and some more stories and about, again, X-Files Museum, Saratoga Springs. There's so many other questions that I wanted to ask you that just didn't have the time today. But is there anything you want to share with our listeners before we wrap this up? Anything you want to plug, like some upcoming projects, or just the floor is yours?
No, I was gonna get in touch with Jim and Kelly before I came on, just to get but just yet there is going to be the X-Files convention again this summer. And I should have looked up the dates, but they're at the end of June. Just go online, the X-Files Museum. They're on Facebook, they're on Twitter as well, so you can get the dates for those. And not to knock any of the other conventions, they're the first experience that I had with a convention, and absolutely love them. I think they did a fantastic job. I think the museum, what I love about Jim and Kelly's convention is that the other, and I haven't been to any of these, but the other conventions, they just don't have the museum and that iceberg of props and stuff with the show that goes
Right,
along with the convention. So
right.
that's what I feel about is really special about the Saratoga convention, is just that it does have the X-Files Museum. And even outside of the convention, go to Saratoga. If you're an X-Files fan, you will not believe the amount of items and props that they have there. And again, like, you can keep on coming back years after years after years, and I'm sure that Jim's going to have pulling out stuff that no one's ever seen before. So yeah, just if any of you are fans that haven't experienced the conventions, yeah, get out to the conventions and meet some other fans and meet some people like us from the show. I know at the Saratoga convention that all of us were, we hung out with everybody after, we did our panel and things like that. I think all of us are pretty down with meeting with the fans and sharing our stories. So yeah, just if you can make it to any of the conventions to get together with other fans, absolutely do it. It's like a big family, because you're all there for the same thing. You all love the same thing, and it's just such a great experience to do. So I encourage people to do that. For anybody else who's listening again, and even for yourself, if you ever want to do like a Q&A, like there's other friends of yours that are fans and stuff, and you want to sit down and do a Q&A, I would love to be part of that. Give me some time ahead just so I can look at episodes, so I can remember what we did for episodes. But yeah, again, I'd love to be part of any conventions or any podcasts or anything like that. I've got a lot of great stories, and I hope that people listening in today felt that these stories were something that they would love to hear more of.
Well, I'm sure of it, because it's, behind the scenes stories. Like, every fan loves behind the scenes stories, especially if they have something to do with like creatures and, fake dead bodies and gross, exciting stuff like that.